Hey, how's everyone doing? Great. Good to hear it. Sorry, I got to interrupt. Please continue to eat, but as many of you know, we had to move the morning keynote conversation to the afternoon. But like I told you in the beginning, we're going to be flexible, move things on the fly. It was just great that Dr. Tiffany Green could make it here from Madison, so we're happy to accommodate and make sure we have this really important discussion. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna first start with the morning keynote, then we're gonna go into our lunch in keynote, they're both basically the same now, with the subjects, the film subjects from Aftershock. Who in here, yeah, round of applause. All right, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but who in here hasn't seen the film yet? Okay, a few people, no judgment. But after this talk today with Shawnee, Omari, and Bruce, trust me, you're gonna wanna go see the film immediately. It is such a pleasure to have them here with us today to talk about the importance of the film, but even more important, to talk about their personal stories. But first, let's start with, I want to introduce a good friend of mine, actually. We went to high school together, believe it or not. And she was actually, Dr. Kowalik, was actually only one class behind me. Now, you wouldn't know it if you looked at us. I look like I was probably like several classes ahead of her, but Dr. Jeanette Kowalik is the president and owner of, is it Jail? Jail Solutions Consulting Services. Dr. Kowalik, as many of you know, has over a decade of progressive public health experience, particularly in infant mortality disparities among African American and Latinx adolescents. Dr. Kowalik has served as UWM's Director of Prevention and Campus Health Initiatives, Associate Director of Women's and Infant Health at the Association of Maternal and Child Health Programs in Washington, D.C., and, of course, as Commissioner of Health for the City of Milwaukee, and she has a new title, but I'll let her let you know about that. Please welcome to the stage Dr. Jeanette Kowalik. And next we want to introduce our other speaker today, Dr. Tiffany Green, Assistant Professor of Population Health Sciences and Obstetrics and Gynecology for UW-Madison. Currently, Dr. Green is the Assistant Professor in the Department of Population Health Sciences and an economist and population health scientist. Dr. Green aims to understand the causes and consequences of racial and ethnic disparities in reproductive health. She applies methods from economics, demography, psychology, and health services research to document and unpack the sources of these disparities and has published in various peer-reviewed journals. Dr. Green. Just a quick side note before I hand Dr. Green my microphone. We called this a keynote conversation for a reason. This is not a lecture. This is a conversation between these two amazing experts and you. So the idea is they're gonna talk and they want you to engage in the conversation. That means let's ask questions. We're gonna have a runner with a microphone, raise your hand, or if the spirit takes over, just yell it out. And the key is to make this interactive. Again, the whole point of today's symposium is to make sure that we're all engaging and interacting with each other in a very active way instead of just sitting and listening. Okay.
Hello. Thanks, Gerard. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's good to see you all. Some familiar faces, some new faces. I just want to have a moment to just send positive energy to all of you, knowing that in the birth justice, reproductive justice space, that many of us enter this field because of our passion, whether we've experienced certain things in our lives, our loved ones, or just being called to act and be engaged and involved on behalf of the Black community. So thank you for joining us. And thank you for joining us, Dr. Tiffany Green. Coming from Madison, we definitely know that that is quite the journey, especially with the snow. And I was joking as we were having a sidebar conversation. So I'm a blurred, if you know what that means, and I'm into comic books. So I just got my storm tattoo on my hip on Wednesday, and then we got this crazy snowstorm today. So I apologize for the timing of that. But anyway, thank you for joining us. It's so wonderful that you're here in Milwaukee and the state of Wisconsin, all of the amazing work and research that you're doing. So just, if you have a moment just to let folks know who you are and how awesome you are.
Sure. I live in Madison, but I'm not from Madison. I am originally from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Any Philly people here? No? All right. So I actually was a postdoc here many years ago. I won't say how many, but I was a postdoc here. And when I left, I thought I was never coming back. I was like, these winters are not for me. That really didn't work out very well. But so a few years later, a call went out at UW-Madison for a cluster hire in reproductive equity. So that's basically when universities say, we need expertise in this area. And it just felt like that job had been written for me. So I was like, I guess I gotta apply. And here I am. And so why am I here? Thank you, honey. Thank you. You took a picture of me, baby. Thank you very much. Thank you. Can I tell them your name? Yeah, okay. That is my eldest son, Nathaniel. So that's him, yeah. And so one of the things Dr. Kowalik asked me is, why do I do this work? Part of it is the transition for me from doing reproductive inequities work to reproductive justice work started when I had my first child, which you just saw. Because that was the transition when the data stopped becoming just the data and started to become so real for me. And I thought about, man, like these aren't just numbers. How would I feel if I lost my child? How would I feel knowing that I didn't make it out of the delivery room, or I didn't make it through that first year and my children didn't have someone to have them? So that's what I bring to my work. And I think being positioned in Wisconsin is very important and has shaped my work, because now I tend to look at more local problems and more important, try to center the communities here that are doing that work. Because my experience has been, Gerard said I could say what I want, so I'm here. My experience has been that I tend to be the only one, and I don't like that. A lot of the work on reproductive equity tends to be dominated by white women in research, and the Black women are on the ground doing the work. And I want to change that. I wanted to be that bridge, and more importantly, have Black people's assets and their challenges, have them be the ones speaking for that. So that is really the ethos of my work. And so now I'm working on birth cost recovery, which many of you may know is a policy in Wisconsin that forces unwed fathers to pay for some of the Medicaid birthing costs in the state. And so Dane County stopped doing that at the beginning of 2020, new birth cost recovery collections. So my team and I are really trying to understand the effects of this policy change, and we're doing that by interviewing Black birthing people and in both one-on-one interviews, and also trying to work with the Survey Center to validate a survey that is specifically tailored for Black birthing people, and then go pilot that survey. So we're trying to really center the voices of communities that have been disproportionately affected by this policy and really uplift that. So that's really what my work is centered on.
Thank you for sharing. Two reflections based off of what you've shared. One, being from Milwaukee, growing up in Sherman Park, and experiencing pretty much what many of our community members feel, like how harmful the whole prenatal process can be, the birthing process, and then thereafter. I mean, I was on W-2, Title 19, forward card, everything. And my son's father is a great guy, and I remember when he got that notice, that bill for our birthing expenses, and how distraught he was based off of that. And then, of course, because I didn't have health insurance, because I was 19 at the time when I had my son, that we were automatically put into the system. We had to go to court, and child support order was placed because we weren't married, and just how traumatic that was for us. All the while, I was an undergrad at UW-Milwaukee and healthcare administration at that time, and didn't really understand policy and why that was, like thinking that was normal, that anybody that went through the situation that we went through, that you just had to deal with it. But knowing that people like you, researchers, are bringing information to us that, enlightening us that this isn't the way that it has to be. And how do we change policy? So we're going to talk about that in our discussion about mobilizing folks for action. And how do you move beyond just being upset and angry and knowing that you're being treated unfairly into making some true lasting change. So that's one. The second thing is being from Milwaukee and knowing how passionate we are about our field and our calling, that having someone come in from a different community can go two different ways. You can, one, see someone as being a neutral liaison and convener that can really help move things forward. And some of us get territorial and we can get stuck in certain points. But having a neutral person come in and be like, okay, I hear you and I hear you. Perhaps these are some things we could do to move forward. Here's some examples of things that are working in other communities. And just increasing our awareness and our knowledge that we can be innovative, we can co-create and do things differently. So I do see that as a huge asset and a plus, that you've been able to come in and center community. And although we're doctors, we don't know it all. We have to move out of the way. We don't always have to have our name on things. We're not ego-driven or ego-centered people. We do it because we care, because we are moving through whatever our divine calling may be. So just reminding everybody that, whatever you're doing, just continue to center yourselves, because this work can be very heavy, as you all know. So whatever that means, just pursue it and make it a priority so you don't burn out, because we definitely need you and all of the wonderful things that you're doing. So the next question is tied to just some things we were talking about. What does the community need, other than us getting out of the way? Is money, right? Resources. And we know that there's huge inequity related to how much people are paid. Being able to have money in the bank, investments. We were talking about, being able to meet payroll and just having cash flow as a nonprofit. Dowry, we were talking about that. So just, acknowledging that not everybody is coming from money, and how difficult it is to access capital and resources to support the work that you're doing. So if you could share a little bit about some of the advice or insights that you have related to that topic, that'd be great.
I want to calibrate this conversation by being really clear that I am in systems, right? So I don't come at this with my hands clean, but as somebody who wants to make changes. And so one of the things that I see very often is like really shocked when I tell people, from community, I'm like, okay, I can pay you this consulting rate, I can pay you. They're like, okay, we're getting paid. I'm like, yeah, right? So I think it's really important to understand your value and expertise. This is capitalism, all right? So given that we're in this system, understanding that you have value and that you should not necessarily be giving your knowledge away for free because you care about your community. You part of the community. So how are you going to be taking care of everybody else and not take care of yourself? I'm talking to myself a lot of that time too. So the first thing I think is really important that you go in with knowledge that there are ways to pay you, even if and I don't know anything about UW Milwaukee because I'm not there, but I'm telling you as someone from Flagship University, people can pay you if they want to pay you. And you should ask for what you believe that you're worth. And so the first thing I tell people from communities that you are consultants and that you should be paid for your expertise. The second thing that's really important to understand when people are coming to you is like, okay, just like you asked for an event, what's your budget? Ask them what the budget for their grant is. I'm serious, you can ask me, right? Ask them what the budget for their grant is. Because I can tell you there are things that really small grants that it may be really hard for researchers to pay, they still should, but pay you, right? And then, grants from, say, the National Institutes of Health, regularly they're millions of dollars. So they're millions of dollars, but they can't pay you some kind of rate. And it may be that, again, we're limited by certain rules at universities, but you still can be, there are ways that you can be compensated for your time. And I think that's really important because I have to always check myself every day to make sure I'm not extracting from my own community, right? And the nature of this, and I don't want to sound cynical, I want this to be a situation where community and universities, which have traditionally, institutions can't love us, right? but they can't, right? But at the same time, you want to make a difference in what's happening, you should still be paid your worth. And so I want everybody, and you feel free to email me. Like I will respond, like if you have questions about this, but I want to make sure that you go in understanding that there are ways to compensate you and that you also have the trump card, right? You have the trump card. Researchers cannot recruit a sample that is representative without you. They can't, right? So you have that to say, well, you don't want to pay me, you must not want your sample. And if they don't want to pay you and not get their sample, then what does that say about their ethics? And what does that say for their intentions about the work? You also should be asking questions. So when I do a study, I make sure that I have a worksheet. This is what the study is about. Here are my intentions, right? And so asking people direct and pointed questions about what the intentions of the work are. Are they doing work that is trying to address real problems, or is it work that's going to stigmatize Black folks? And so that is something really, really also important to consider. So I guess, I don't know what Comms thought about this interview, but I was interviewed on the news a couple of days ago, and there was a study about Black babies having increases in SIDS rates. And so, the researchers are speculating without data that, it's that they have cultural differences about breastfeeding, it's prenatal care. I'm like, well, that's been going on, lack of access to care has been going on a long time. Why are you using Black dysfunction without data as a way to justify what is happening to our babies? That's not science, right? And that's hurting people. So you have a right to ask. You could look, a lot of our work is free online, especially if it's been funded by the federal government. Look and see what they've written. Ask them hard questions about that work. And if you're interested in the process of co-creating, co-authoring, that's also can be very important. So those are a few of the things that I think it's really important to ask. And I say that, and you can ask me those questions. And I say that because I want our community to be empowered and to be part of the process of scientific creation, because that shapes the questions that get asked and the questions that get answered. And they don't get solved by excluding people, the very people affected from the conversation. So those will be a few of my tips.
Thank you for sharing. So a couple of reflections. First off, acknowledging that you all are the experts, so you should be empowered to ask for whatever you need financially to do whatever it is someone's asking you to do. And this has been a big life lesson for me since I've been a full-time consultant. I have my own consulting firm, JL Solutions. And being in government for a number of years, there has to be a process of deprogramming that you have to go through of not making things difficult, or you think things have to be a certain way because that's what you were accustomed to. I think one of the beauties of COVID and this pandemic, and just acknowledging all of the life loss and people that have been negatively impacted through this rampant disease, is all of the excuses that a lot of government and organizations were making about procurement and contracting were really blown out of the water. You saw them expediting getting money out of the door very quickly, one, because emergency declarations were made, so that cleared a lot of red tape. But aside from that, there were just a number of things that were being done differently that people have been talking about forever, and you're finally seeing these things happen. And you see some kind of pushback, or some folks are, let's go back to the old way, or let's do this, or no, hold the line. Let's keep things easy, accessible, increasing access as much as possible, turning payments around quickly, using, there's this mentality of using paper for everything, switching over to various certified types of electronic sources and things like that. I mean, the list is long, but the point is all of those excuses were thrown out of the window, and now we know what is possible and that we can continue to push for innovation and streamlining and making things more accessible for ourselves and our communities. The other thing, too, is when we talk about funds, so one of the projects that I'm responsible for as a consultant is the Birth Justice Rapid Response Fund. And this is something that is managed by the National Birth Equity Collaborative and the Praxis Project, Ms. Foundation, and Sister Song, and the Groundswell Fund. And so this fund was meant to provide access to birth workers, whether it be individuals or organizations, whether they're 501c3s or not. So you all know a lot of wonderful organizations are not 501c3s. They don't have a fiscal sponsor. They might be C4s. They might just be LLCs, whatever the case may be. It is not that easy just to become a 501c3. So our goal through this collaborative is to increase access to funds. So we had $1.5 million that we've been issuing in 3 waves. So we issued the first wave late last year. The second wave is going to open up in April. So that's just birthequity.org. You'll see it on social media too through the partners that I listed. But that application period should be about 3 weeks. And even how you apply. So I talked about the different types of entities through the IRS, which can be a huge barrier. But we talked about the quality of grant writers and access to grant writers, and how there's a number of organizations that miss out on grant funds because they don't have a grant writer. They don't have a grant department. They don't know how to package the work that they're doing. So we try to make it super streamlined. And the feedback we received from the first wave is to make it even more streamlined. So, a short form, and, just do videos, or, let us know what you're doing. You could just talk about it. You don't have to even put it into words. But making sure things are translated in different languages is another point that we always have to be mindful of. We can't just always assume everybody's gonna find default of English. So, those are just some reflections that I have based off of what you said. But another point too, just thinking about, there's, with the Dobbs, Roe versus Wade being overturned, and access to abortion services and quality health care, and how that is a whole nother issue, a barrier that we have to overcome, especially in Wisconsin. It's how do you come together to change the law? And there's organizations that have a lot of great ideas, a lot of momentum, but don't have the resources to do that type of work. So those are the things that, through the Birth Justice Fund, things that we want to support. So, I just wanted to share that opportunity. But there's other types of rapid response funds and other grant monies that are available. So just knowing where these monies are, and also acknowledging that, project-based grants require a lot of administrative time, right? Who is going to manage the project? Just give people general operating money. I'm going to give you $50,000. You figure out what to do with it. I'm not going to micromanage how you spend the $50,000. So organizations that do fundraising, philanthropy, whatever, let the money go. Like, why are we gatekeeping? Why are we trying to make things more difficult for people? And I know when it comes to like federal and state money, it's not as easy as that. But for like private funds or being a subcontractor, like just different things we could do to increase access to resources. So just wanted to put some of those reflections out there, some things that we were talking about that we think are of value, and to make sure that you all are aware of, that just keep holding these organizations accountable, hold us accountable, make sure that we're increasing access to resources, because knowledge is always currency. So you knowing where these monies are is going to make a big difference in you being able to do the work.
So, one thing I'm thinking, I wonder if it'd be useful to open up to the audience. I know we have some other things to talk about, but I wonder if it'd be useful, because I saw people leaning forward in their chairs a little bit when we were talking about coins. And I think this is a really important conversation to have, because we keep talking about reproductive health justice like we get in there for free. And that doesn't work that way. And so we really want to help you understand how to get the resources you need to do, because y'all are already doing the work. What if we gave you even more, if I had money, I'd give you all the money. But, if you got more money for that, how much more could you do? So please, we would love to answer any of those questions. I think Gerard has the mic. Oh, look, there you are. And please tell us your name.
My name is Ms. Rose.
All right, Ms. Rose.
My question is this. Why can't all grants of governmental entity incorporate the basics of expectation of results of whatever it is they're studying or the grants are for, with possibilities of solutions, just a common general thought process? So therefore, because many times I used to go to entities to say, well, how many people did you help? How many did this? They had no quantitation of what were the outcome of the people they worked with. And if they include where you must document what the people, you don't have to individualize, but generalize, so that you know the quantity of people are being exposed to that grant, so you know if the money is at least being exposed to the people, even if the results might not be what you want.
Ooh, we need you in government, Ms. Rose. But from my perspective as a researcher, organizations don't tend to value evaluation as much as actual implementation. And that's a problem, because we keep doing the same stuff over and over without knowing whether it actually works. So the big, for me on the research side, is that we got to get organizations to value. It can cost as much money to do a good evaluation as it does to implement the project in the first place. And so I think we need to, one, have people how do you know this? Has this been done before? And so I see a lot of people doing the same, we've done this before. How do we know it works? So all I can say is you're absolutely right, and we got to shift the conversation to funding evaluations and having better standards for those.
Thanks, Ms. Rose, and thanks, Dr. Green. So one of the other points, too, related to that is with the Birth Justice Fund, that the two things that we, of course, there's some criteria, but two things that stood out to us based off of just talking to the other partners is that, one, the organization's leadership reflects the community that's being served. So the majority, so over 50%. We talk about this appropriation, this, swagger jacking of, wanting to be the lead of RJ, BJ, and as a boutique project or something along those lines. But these are people's lives. We want to know that you actually can relate to the people that you're serving. On a similar vein, when I was health commissioner, city of Milwaukee, one of the many things that I did in the 2 years that I was in office was to reestablish the Board of Health. And as you all know, you need a group of peers that can oversee a health organization and make sure they're doing what they're supposed to do, that know the terminology, that can speak the language, but that they represent the diversity of the community that's being served. And that's exactly what we did. So thank you, Dr. Mills. So just how important is that? And holding people to the line on that, actually doing your homework and researching, because we know there's people out here that lie and say they are Latina or Latinx and they white, right? So doing the homework, who are you really? And just being real about it. the other side of it is who's being served, right? So you have the leadership representing or reflecting the community that's being served, but also what is the population that you're touching or that you're serving, and providing the data on that. That was extremely important for us too. So we wanted to know that this isn't going to just fund a group of wealthy elite women, white women that really have resources, but you're just trying to get free money to do the work. So, you know, those were just two things that we really wanted to have some kind of validation on that level of information, because we know that resources are so scarce, and we want to make sure the money is going to those that have the greatest need. So, oh, yes.
I wasn't sure if anyone behind me was going. So greetings to you both.
Okay.
Thank you for creating this conversation. My name is Shani. So I have two things I want to say, and I want to be really quick so that you can actually answer. You mentioned science. And one of the things that I'm very adamant about, I consider myself a scholar, but I'm also spiritual, and I'm also emotionally intelligent. And those are competencies that don't get valued. And so while I have deep respect for research that doesn't integrate those two things, to me, not garbage, but it misses the mark. So I especially want folks who are black and brown to stand up for the technologies that come from our grandmothers, that they didn't need to have anybody vet it. It just worked because it worked. And I don't know how we can integrate that, but we need to restore that, because that's contributing to our deaths and loss. And it's also keeping people out of the conversation that have the most genius that we could ever have, that folks that have me be alive right now. So I don't know how that would work, but I want to transform and decolonize what we consider competence. And who's worthy of being at the table, who's worthy of being the keynote. And they don't have to, they can have, I don't even know what to say about this, but just how they speak. It's white supremacy culture at its best, that we keep going in that direction and not honoring just the lived experiences of people and the genius that they brought without having a tool or tech, none of that. The other thing I wanted to say is, I don't know what's happening, that I was just speaking to Zay about this, that the March of Dimes, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, don't tell me them I was talking about them because they gave us money.
They already gave it.
Y'all gave? I mean, don't you tell them.
They already gave it, though.
I'm sorry?
They already gave it, though. Did the check clear?
Yeah, it is in the account, Omari, right? So thank y'all, the folks. Thank you, love. But who is holding them accountable? What's the metrics for holding them accountable for how they give the money? Who's sitting around saying who gets and who doesn't? Why are certain organizations, March of Dimes, continuing to get money, and folks like us who have grassroots organizations that are boots on the ground doing this work every single day have to fight and jockey to keep ourselves running and alive? There's something terribly wrong with that. And so I just want to start pulling our own stuff together and holding folks accountable that are contributing to this loss and devastation. And that's all I got to say for now.
That was a lot. So I'm going to answer your question, but answer it very indirectly. So a lot of what I have learned about being a black researcher has come from the neurodiverse community. And let me tell you why. I was on Facebook. I should have been doing some work, but I was on Facebook, and I was in a mom's group, and there was this study that came out about autism and stomachs and diet. And so the idea was that what you were eating, well, is this treating symptoms? And everybody's going around and around trying to say whether it was scientifically valid. And then this one person, she was like, oh yeah, I'm an autistic person, I'm a researcher, and this all makes sense to me, because the symptoms of trying to deal with a structurally ableist society show up in our stomachs. So of course, like, treating diet matters. So all these people arguing about whether diet actually has a causal effect on these symptoms, rather than seeing that this is structural. And it took an autistic person who had that lived experience to make it clear what the true problem was. And so I say that to say, that is why I'm so adamant about Black scholars having a seat at the table. And we train in the same departments where we get our mess too, right? And we have to deprogram ourselves. But at the same time, when you have the lived experience, the questions that you ask are more interesting. The questions that you ask are more relevant. So that's why when I hire people, I say, I want people from historically excluded communities. I want the first generation people. I want the neurodiverse people. I want the Black people. I want the brown people, because that is what makes the science better. And so I learned that from, and of course, autistic people can be Black. They've talked about racism within the neurodiverse community. But my point is, when we bring, this isn't just a justice issue, it is a science issue. That when you bring that lived experience that you are talking about, this shared memory to the table, the science is better. And so that is, I think there's a place for that. I think there are people like me that are fighting for that. And it's also about the choices that we make. So, okay, well, Gerard, where's Gerard? But I have had to make some very distinct choices about who I will work with, right? Look at me. I'm the only one of me. I hate being the only one of me, but that means I'm ripe for being exploited. So people can say, oh yes, we care about Black babies because Dr. Green. No, you don't. Why are you coming to me at the last minute? I have an expert, and I'm not saying that as a humble, I have been doing this for a long time. Why are you coming to me at the last minute? I have knowledge that is valuable, that to bring to the table. And so I'm like, no. Why is your research team all white? If I look at research on autism, how many people on your research team are autistic? You doing disability? How many people disabled? Because the questions that get asked look different. I could tell just by looking at the questions. And so that's what I mean when I say you have a right to ask researchers questions. In terms of foundations, if RWJ, you want to give me some money, but I'm still tell you what I think. Full disclosure, I was a RWJ Health and Society Scholar. It transformed my life. It transformed my career. But foundations can be very insular. They give money to who they give money to. So once you start in the loop, you get more money. And that's just the truth. That's just the truth. And so there have been Black women scholars, including reproductive birth justice, people like Karen Scott, who's a retired obstetrician gynecologist, developing the only measure of obstetric racism that we know of, validated in Black populations. She and Monica McLemore, another scholar, have done work trying to talk about racism in foundations and what the composition of foundation program officers look like and who's getting funded. So I would direct you towards their work and others really questioning the larger social paradigm.
Thanks, Dr. Green. Shani? Yes. So everything you said, I'm like, yes, I totally agree with. And it made me reflect on some of the unlearning that I had to do. I talked about like moving away from being in government and being free, being an entrepreneur. But I often think about this of how I was before I started my PhD program. And just shout out to the Ronald McNair Scholar Program, because that's what got me into getting my PhD, is the financial support from that program. And I was at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, and then supported my degrees along the way. But there's a certain type of colonization of your mind that you have to go through to survive getting your PhD. And you lose part of yourself along that way. And I remember very clearly some of the harm that I experienced in my degree program. I'm not throwing any shade on UWM right now, but I'm just reflecting on my experiences as a Black, bisexual, disabled woman, first generation, college student, and everything that I went through and how I had to go through therapy and healing and whatnot. And I had to remember who I was. And that process happened a couple of times, especially when I was health commissioner. That healing process took 18 months after I left the job. But just acknowledging that anyone that's going through any formal education, clinical, research, social science, whatever, you have to make the time to deprogram and acknowledge that you know the rules of the game to be able to make things change and happen, but you have to not, you can't lose yourself along the way. So what are you doing to make sure that you're grounding yourself? I had to get back into my spiritual practice and, my discernment and Reiki and energy work and yoga and just all of this stuff to like help me kind of get back to being able to listen to my ancestors and my creator and just not relying on the science. I think that's one of the other things about COVID. A lot of people start questioning science, right? And a lot of people lost faith in our CDC and other institutions that we relied on for guidance, and was like, why is things this way? Or you're saying you're about health equity, but your policy decisions don't align with what you're saying. So I just love everything you said, and just co-signing, that we have to make sure that we're honoring spirituality and non-Western paradigms and colonial ways of thinking. We just have to. So for anybody that's in a decision-making role that can give out money, including myself, that can move towards that, definitely do that. There's so much value and beauty in it. But I know we're kind of getting close on time.
What are we doing? 2 minutes?
Okay. Well, I think was another
So
hand up.
I think we did want to at least give folks some actionable things. Hopefully we've given you some actionable tidbits. Feel free to grab one of us while we're walking around the conference. But we want to give you some actionable things about what can you do today, like walk out here today and do about reproductive justice and birth equity. And that is vote. I know that sounds very trite, but we are coming up against a really consequential election, and that election is going to determine how many decisions are made, including around birth equity. Mississippi just passed postpartum Medicaid. I'm just saying, Mississippi. And Mississippi is a great place. I'm not knocking Mississippi, but I am knocking the leadership of Mississippi, right? So Mississippi passed postpartum Medicaid for 12 months. We passed it for 1 month. But that's a legislature. So if you want that to change, you have, that the maps are getting potentially be redrawn. That's an opportunity. And it's hard because it's hard for people to make that connection. But if you think people should have access to comprehensive health care, including abortion, you got to vote on the 4th. If you think that social programs matter in terms of driving people's birth outcomes, and they do, you gotta vote on April 4th, and election after that and after that. So the problem is we focus on presidential elections, important, but the stuff that determines what happens in Wisconsin every day, that's local. That's local. So if you have great people you wanna run, I'll tell you, I don't know anything about that, but I know people that can help you think through that. Your school boards, your mayor, all that stuff matters. So please, did I miss anything, Gerard?
I have 2 more to add.
Yeah, you got 2 more. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much. The other side of, you all know this, people tell you to vote. I mean, I got into voting once I turned 18 because I knew how important it was, because my grandma instilled that in me, coming up from Tennessee to Milwaukee, and just how Black pride and civil rights and being able to exercise our freedoms because they weren't available to us, and how important that was. But the 2 other things related to this, one, who's running for office? We should not be voting for somebody just because they're Black, because we know all skinfolk and kinfolk, as we all know. We have been stabbed in the back, in the front, by many people that look like us that are in office. So we need better candidates. We need to vet these people. Also, there's people that don't run for office because they have backgrounds. I mean, I had 2 bankruptcies. That was all in the paper or whatever. Just because you have some, issues in your past doesn't mean you're not good to run for office. If anything, you're more relatable. You're a real person. So, helping people, supporting people, making a circle of support around these people that are considering running for office is extremely important. And the last thing is donating. So we all don't have major money, right? But small donations, individual donations add up. Look at, Mandela Barnes. He raised so much money. I mean, granted, he lost by 26,000 votes. That's a whole nother issue. But the second part of that is that if you can only donate $5 a month, $10 a month, I mean, we spend that on what? Coffee, a drink. So supporting these candidates is really important, giving them money, because they need money for ads. That's how you win elections. You need ads, repetition. That's how our minds work. You see something multiple times. You hear something multiple times. You need money to do that. So just reminding you all, if you have any thought about running for office, please don't just squash it because you think that you're inadequate or you don't have the money or you did this in the past or whatever. You can still do it, and we want to support you in that. We want to make sure people that value what we value are in office and that they're supported and that they're able to stay in those roles. Because we see there's way too many people that are in office, career politicians, that aren't doing anything for us. So, with that being said.
I think Gerard is telling us to get off the stage.
Yes. Well, we're making up for the morning, so we got a lot to say.
We have some things to say.
So thank you to Milwaukee Film, Black Lens
Thank
for the
you.
opportunity, and have a wonderful rest of the
Thank you so
symposium.
much.
I promise you I was not kicking them off the stage. No, I was giving the wrap-up sign. But thank you so much. Much appreciated again to have Dr. Kowalik and Dr. Green here. Was really important to us. And now we're going to move into our second half of the lunchtime keynote. So one of the things that is really important to me about this work is that it's very personal. And so thinking about the experiences that myself and my wife had with our 3 children, bringing this together over the last couple of years has been a labor of love to a great extent. The film Aftershock, we had been tracking for a while. We wanted to make sure that we got it, wanted to make sure that we made it accessible to the community. Hulu is great, and for anyone that has Hulu, you can watch Aftershock, but not everyone has Hulu. And so that meant for us getting the ability to show the film at our theater for free. Again, to me, it's easy to talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, all the trendy keywords, but if you're not making things accessible for the community, then at the end of the day, it does not really matter. So with that said, I just want to play the trailer again for anyone that hasn't seen it, but even more so for those that have seen it, because I'm only going to ask a few questions. I'm just going to get the conversation sort of grounded in the experiences of our 3 guests, but then I want to turn it over to you. So that means think about your question. And it doesn't just have to be a question. It can be a feeling. What did you think about the film? How did it touch you? You know how you watch a film and wish, man, I wish I could talk to that person. They're here. You can. So unless you want to sit in silence for like 20 minutes, I suggest you come up with some really interesting questions, okay? Because once they're gone, okay? Kevin?
My daughter's story is loud. My daughter's story is loud, colorful, and artful. It's a girl! She was awake, aware, and active. And yet she still died.
After she gave birth, Shamani was complaining that she had really sharp chest pains.
The ambulance came. I'm telling them the symptoms.
Is she on drugs?
Next set of people come in.
Is she on drugs?
They kept asking her mother, is she on any drugs?
Like, do y'all talk?
We waited a solid 12 hours.
She's gone.
Black women are 4 times more likely to die than their white counterparts with the same symptoms. Why is that?
This is a growing epidemic in our community.
Hundreds and thousands of men are going through this same situation.
Oh, you couldn't tell me that I wouldn't be there.
I've never lived in this house without her.
You just gotta keep pushing forward. I can't let Amber be another statistic.
I had a plan, I had it mapped out.
If these numbers were flipped around and white women were dying at the rate that black women are dying, it would be a national crisis.
We fight against maternal morbidity event by event in order to create change.
We can turn our pain into power and make something of this.
Shamani Gibson, we hear you, we see you.
I planned on spending a lifetime with Amber. I wanted to give her my life. This way, I'm still going to.
Sometimes change.
The revolution will be tweeted, Instagram, Facebook.
This fight is not over.
When black mothers die, there's a ripple effect. We call it aftershocks.
Sometimes change.
I'd like to welcome to the stage Shani Benton, Executive Director and CEO of the Griot Healing Circle. Amari and brother, I hope I'm saying it right, Maynard. All right, there we go. Of the Araya Foundation. Aria, thank you. And Bruce McIntyre, founder of Save a Rose Foundation. We need another mic. We're going to grab another mic real quick, but Shawnee, since you have the mic already, I thought we would start with, I wanted each of you to talk about your loved one. I've seen the movie a couple of times, but, and I was emotionally drawn in just to your stories. But tell us about who Shamani was, and also tell us about who you were before and now who you are after.
Trying to get myself together up here. The applause, the standing ovation, and then this question. Remind me to punch you in the face. But who you see in the film, who you see before you, and who I was before Shamani's transition is the same. My brand for living, not business related, is Powerhouse in the House. I've been a cycle breaker since I was a kid. And it's a heavy burden to be that when others are like, don't say that, don't do that. I see nods in the audience. There are other cycle breakers in here. It's a lot. However, what I will say, and then I'll talk a bit about Shamani, is that I'm a psychotherapist by training. I've spoken to thousands of people over my 32-year career as a social worker about varying things. Loss. Before Shamani passed away, I ran a support group for folks who experience birth trauma and loss, stillbirth, fertility issues. So this was my work before she transitioned, which made the loss so devastating. But I remember the first text message I got, and a woman, just being kind and reaching out was like, oh, now we're in this group together, women who have lost their daughters. And I was like, I'm not in that group. I resisted it. I didn't want to be the mother who had lost her daughter. I've transformed that, of course, since then. I'm so proud to be the mother of an ancestor like Shamani, because she is gangster. oh my goodness, like we're here because of her, because she's kicked down doors. On the spiritual side, she was like, oh, I got this power now, I'm gonna use it, and she's using it. But who I am in reference to my relationship with grief has been transformed. You know, holding space for so many and then having people hold space for me, it's a deeply humbling experience. And I've grown as a leader, I've grown as a woman, I've grown as a Black person, I've grown as a spiritual person. It's transformed my entire life because I have an ancestor who was in my womb first. Nothing like it. And the deep level of connection to spirit, because she was in my womb first. That was her first house. Nothing like it. So I just want to thank y'all for holding space for me and my daughter and helping me to grow up, because I do that every day. So appreciative. And I'll say really quickly about Shamani, a light, voice deep as mine, beautiful physically, but also wanting people to know that she had depth and very much in love with family and was relentless about making sure that we stayed connected together. So it's not by accident that she made sure that we're tethered for life. She's like, y'all gonna start an organization. We will never be out of each other's lives. I'm like, damn. You know I love you. But she made sure that her babies and her partner would be connected to me forever. And I'm so grateful. I didn't know what I needed till I got it. So this is my son.
That was beautiful. I don't know if I have to answer the question. I'm just gonna kind of freestyle. Just want to say thank you first. Milwaukee Films, this is amazing. Black Lens, thank you. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine the other day who was in the film industry, and you know, she was telling me, like, in terms of our film, Aftershock, you know, films don't go on runs the way our film has. For it to be, came out, you know, last year, and for us to, you know, still be on stage having these conversations a year later, you know, and just the, not just the appreciation, but the actual backing of the film, you know, is unprecedented. And it's really because of the fact that, you know, we're telling a story that is, of course, specific to us, but it's honestly, this is our story, right? There's so many Shamanis out there in this country, in this world, and unfortunately, Black curated content doesn't, you know, we don't really get these stories the way that we need to. We don't understand these stories. We think that, you know, there's happening in our community or it's happening to us, but, you know, not necessarily feeling like, you know, this is happening to all of us, you know, and I'm just so thankful for being able to have these types of conversations, being able to go to different cities to talk about our story, you know, to make sure that we're shedding more light on it and to make sure that in that light we are really transforming, you know. So just thank y'all for doing the work, for being on the ground, for doing it for so long, you know, for me and Bruce specifically, you know, it's been about 3 years, but, you know, midwives, doulas, you know, social workers, y'all been doing it for decades and decades and decades and don't get the recognition that you should, the money that you should, you know, so just thank y'all again. And because of that, you know, for me, I'm going to make sure that I continue to use my platform in order to make sure that I'm uplifting y'all, because again, without y'all, there will be no change, you know, so I'm just using Shamani's story and Shamani is just using me in order to create different conduits for these things to happen. So just thank y'all, for real.
Thank you everyone for being here. There we go. Can y'all hear me? Can I get a yer one time so I can feel like I'm at home? Let me get that again. Yer. Loving the energy, loving the energy. Thank you so much for being here. And it's an important topic, but I do want to share who Amber was and who she is. So I've known Amber since I was maybe 13, 14 years old. And we started off as, you know, friends, came from the same neighborhood. And, we grew up as friends. And, you know, when you're close to someone like that, of course, emotions and feelings start developing, and I always found myself shooting my shot with Amber, right? And every time she would turn me down. I never lost hope, but she would turn me down because she was just so goal-driven. She was just so focused on school. She wasn't worried about boys. She wasn't worried about dating. She was focused on who she was becoming and developing as a woman, and who she was as a person. And I respected that. And we kept our relationship strong as friends. I actually moved to North Carolina for a while, and she was still living in the Bronx, and we still kept communication through social media. And before she went off to college, I tried to shoot my shot again. It was a no-go. But we still kept in touch. And one day she reaches out to me and she says, "Hey, I'm graduating soon with my bachelor's degree. You should come. It's around your birthday." And we started talking from there, and things kindled back up, and I flew back out to New York for my birthday weekend and her graduation weekend, and it's been magic ever since. And I was ecstatic. I found the woman of my dreams. I always felt like Amber was my person. And we had a life ahead of us. We were two young, bright-minded, strong people who knew what we wanted out of life. We were perfect for one another. Everyone around us seen that. And it was, I really thought I had life figured out. And during those times, within our relationship, I was dealing with some personal issues that caused me to have anxiety and depression, and it was really hard for me. And reaching out to therapists and counselors and even friends, it wasn't working for me. And Amber, I was able to confide in her. And she had just received her bachelor's in psychology as well, so I felt like she had all of the right things to say to me. And she was the one to really coach me through my anxiety and my depression, and she taught me how to love myself again, which was something I was struggling with. And now that she's gone, I'm still a testament of who Amber was and who she is. Because after her passing, I carried along everything that she taught me, everything that we learned together. And in those times when I was feeling down, I could still hear her over my shoulder coaching me, telling me that I got this, uplifting me, always feeding positive affirmations to me. And that's what I needed. Before all of this, I was a financial loan advisor on Wall Street. I worked right next to the New York Stock Exchange. I was a music producer. I was also a songwriter for some people as well. And Amber, while she was pregnant, she was working on her master's degree for business development. She wanted to create extracurricular activities for children, especially for children of color with struggling parents who had to work, or she wanted to eventually open her own school because she taught children. She had a passion for children. She loved children. She loved educating children. She wanted to put children on the right path. She wanted to give children that looked like us a chance in life. About a month after she passed away, she was supposed to walk with my son in her arms, walking to receive her master's degree. And that was stripped from me. And I actually had to bury the love of my life on my birthday. So did Amari. Amari had to deal with the same thing. And so, that it carries with me. It keeps me strong knowing who she is and that I have to keep her name alive because she had so much to give to our communities. And I want to make sure that that is still fulfilled in her legacy. She's made me a stronger person than I ever was, and that's who I am today.
Thank you so much. I just got a couple more, and then we're going to turn it over to Diva. Can you wave your hand? Diva is the Black Lens Coordinator. Round of applause for Diva. Anyone want to ask a question or tell them how the movie impacted or affected you, Diva will come and give you the mic. So, before we get started, question for you two brothers. So, obviously, your stories resonated with me, right? But I think beyond just the experience, your bravery. I think we all like to think of ourselves as brave. Like in the moment of crisis, you'll stand up and you'll do what's right and you'll be that superhero. And in real life, it's not that easy. And so I was really interested in your connection, how the two of you came together. One of the workshops we got is a fatherhood initiative work group. And what's amazing about this group of brothers is it's really vulnerable, right? And we're talking about all the barriers to being that advocate that we want to be for our partner. But, the idea that you took this pain and then manifested you organized this movement, and then the idea of being models, right? Because when I look at that film, I see all of you as models, right? And so talk to us a bit about how the two of you came together and then just how you see your role in all of this.
Well, Shamani passed first. She passed October 6, 2019, 13 days after giving birth to Kari. And, like Bruce alluded to, it was 5 days before my birthday. And we ended up having to bury Shamani on my birthday. Between that time, between those 5 days, and Shawnee talked about it, tons of people were reaching out to us, hundreds and hundreds of people. And it's only because of the fact how impactful Shawnee's been in the community, what Shamani has done for our community, and then also myself. We are all and always have been community driven. So honestly, like through all these people reaching out, there's a handful of people who I could really tell how I was feeling and what was really going on, or just I needed questions to be answered, and only specific people could answer them. 2 strangers reached out to me via social media, and both of them lost their partners, due to maternal mortality. And, that was the first time where it was like, yo, like this is so crazy because, again, they didn't know me from anywhere. But they knew what the story was. They knew how I felt because of the fact that they went through the same thing themselves. So those 2 gentlemen I was really able to confide in and really have some deep, meaningful conversations and figuring out what my next steps were going to be in this new chapter of my life. And for me, like I just needed to make sure that I paid that forward because of how impactful it was, like I said, for me. And I know this was needed for other brothers because, again, this is an epidemic that is, crippling our community. And I know like there's other brothers, but I just don't know where they're at. So then when I heard Bruce's story, again, that was an opportunity for me to have a conversation with Bruce and, just sit down and let him know, like, yo, I don't know you, man. I'm so sorry for your loss. But even more than that, and it's fine, I get why people say it, but when somebody says your condolences or I'm sorry for your loss and that's it, it's like, I understand because, you don't know what to say, but for me, I needed something deeper, you know, and for Bruce, I knew he needed something deeper. And, you know, we had those real conversations. The first time we talked for hours, you know, just about life and what we're gonna do and how we're gonna do it, and just, you know, spilling, just emoting, you know, and it was so important for our healing processes to have somebody to just be able to dump on, you know, and that's kind of really where our relationship started. And, you know, we've been tethered ever since, especially too because of the fact that we both lost our, you know, partners around the same time and had to bury them on our birthday. Like, once you hear that, like, first time he told me this, I had crazy goosebumps. But, you know, sometimes, especially for me and just men in general, like, we need to be slapped in the face with certain things, like, to know, like, all right, guy, this is what you're supposed to be doing. You know, so, and I knew that Shimani and Amber were doing just that, you know, for us. So, like, that led us down this path of, I'm gonna be here for you, whatever you try to do. And I know Bruce is the same for me. Whatever I'm trying to do, whatever I'm into, he's always here to support. And, you know, that's pretty much how the bond started.
And I had, you know, fathers reaching out to me as well during those times. You know, around the same time that Omari was reaching out to me. And these fathers had, just like Omari had mentioned, were dealing with a maternal mortality loss. And, you know, I'm picking their brains because I'm trying to figure out, you know, because I started advocating immediately. As soon as we left the hospital, I started advocating for Amber the very next morning. And we became viral, not only over the US, but international as well. So I had, you know, tons of people reaching out to me, you know, telling me what you know, things that I could have looked out for, this and that. And, you know, you don't want to hear these things, but reaching out and speaking to these fathers who have dealt with a significant loss like this, yeah, I needed something deeper, like Omari mentioned. And there was one father that I was speaking to specifically, and I'm asking him, how are you coping with this? How are you dealing with this? Because I'm struggling. And his partner had passed away maybe a year previously before Amber. And you know, he says, Bruce, I'm not handling this well at all. He felt like he had to wake up every day and wear a mask and put a cape on, you know, to be there for his children and, you know, and to be the man of his family. And, you know, he's telling me that he's had thoughts about jumping off the roof with his children because he had nowhere else to go and he didn't want to leave his children behind. And, you know, just speaking with him for hours and learning how he was feeling and then asking what type of help was he receiving, I found out that he wasn't really receiving much help. And then when help was offered to me, it wasn't the right kind of help. Instead of offering me something that's really going to help me and save my mental, I have doctors that are trying to prescribe and throw drugs in my face, like antidepressants and Xanax and all of these strong drugs that I don't need to be taking, because if I get doped up and addicted to these drugs, how am I going to be able to take care of my newborn child who just lost his mother if I'm doped up and left incompetent to take care of him? Then you have to worry about CPS showing up at your door and taking your children away, and your children becoming state property, which is a perpetuated cycle that we see very often in our underserved communities. So I understood that there needed to be something better. So that's when I dedicated my life and my time to the foundation that I created for Amber, the Save a Rose Foundation. And it's been our mission to combat and dismantle the systemic flaws within the medical system and redirect the course of birthing equity towards better birthing solutions. And of course, trying to fully integrate midwifery and doula care into women's health care, because those were the people, those were the frontline workers that saved my life. Instead of, you know, throwing drugs at me, they're giving me services, you know, guidance and grief counseling. They're teaching me different kriyas and meditations and all of these, you know, holistic approaches that I could be taking that that saved me. It saved my life. And which is why I push so hard for midwives and doulas. They did this out of the kindness of their hearts. They never asked for a dime. They educated me on reproductive wellness. I wanted, Amber was a pescatarian. Amber was one of the most healthiest women I've ever known in my entire life. So I wanted my son to still receive those same nutrients and vitamins he was receiving from his mother. So I had doulas partner with me and introduce me to lactation consultants. I was able to get my son free donated breast milk for a whole year. And those are the services that we need. So I'm a big advocate for midwifery and doulas. And right now we're currently trying to open a freestanding midwifery-led birthing center in the Bronx.
So real quick, before we move to Q&A, at the risk of you punching me in the face, Shawnee, who takes care of you? And I ask that just because there's a long history of black women putting their community, putting the interest of their country, their family ahead of themselves, shouldering a lot of the burden, often in silence. And so I see the three of you, and I see this amazing portrait of your self-determination, and I don't want to use words like toughness, just your bravery. But at the same time, I do wonder, and I was watching the film with my wife, and I was thinking about her and my mother and seeing them in you and my 12-year-old daughter and thinking, how do you practice self-care, and how do you make sure that you are taking care of you as you're taking care of everyone else?
Yeah, I'm gonna get you. That's a great question, and it's not a question that's asked. I'm trying to think if it, maybe one other time someone asked about all of us and how we take care of ourselves. Right now, I'm out of integrity with me. I'm not getting enough sleep. I'm doing a lot, and one of the things that I will say in public space, because my mantra for living is I expose myself to expand myself. That's a hard thing to live by. But I'm desirous of partnership. I have loads of partnership. Omari's my partner in the ARIA Foundation, and I have loads of people, predominantly women of color, that work with me and cover me. So I'm not, I don't have a loss of that type of covering, but there's something about intimate partnership that we all need. So after leaving the stage, to be able to sink into someone's arms, and black women are deserving of that. You know, I'll laugh about this. You know, first I was like, oh, my full name is not on the flyer. And I'm like, that's good, because people think Benton Gibson means that I have a husband. I do not, right? My former husband was Gibson, and I've never released the name because I'm like, I have my girls, and, you know, just doing that because, once again, the pressure of being a black woman is to prove that you're worthy, that you're not a statistic. So I'm grateful for the question. I'm definitely covered by the ancestors. They tap me on the shoulder all the time. Like I said, my daughter's a principal one. I have folks that look out for me all the time, speak to me, send me things. I'm a physical, kinesthetic person. My artistry takes care of me. I'm an actor, a singer. I'm a producer, a director, a writer. Those things keep me grounded and keep me connected to spirit. But I want partnership. Once again, I'm deserving of partnership. And it is a balm and an elixir, healthy partnership. And, you know, so for any sisters that are out there that are without partnership, you're like, oh, I'm good. No, you're not. Stop lying, right? Healthy partnership is key, but like, especially women doing work like I do, like we definitely need to have a covering that is deeper than you go girl or hand claps. So I thank you again for asking the question, and if y'all know somebody.
Any thoughts, questions?
Thank you all. I'm different. So I guess my question is for Amari, all three of you can answer, that's fine. When it comes to RJ, we heard someone talking about reproductive justice earlier. There's a big gap in that space of men in the conversation, meaning men advocating, men doing the work. What lessons were taught through the situations you all have gone through about how it should have been versus how it was?
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Josh. Yo, let's give it up for Josh, please, man. He's super dope, yo. Like, I've been thankful, our organization's been thankful and grateful to be able to work with Josh over a couple of years. He was one of the first fathers that we reached out to, in order to help just provide fathers with information, man, because again, it's a desert out here. So just knowing that, you were out here doing your thing and, we reached out and he said yes. Super dope, brother, super smart. Just thank you, man. Thank you for the work, yo. But to answer your question, I always go back to, it's a very unique situation for our family because Shawnee's been in the work for so long, and we've been in the community for so long. So as soon, again, as Shamani passed away, we just started doing the thing. We started advocating, we started, we created our, pretty much, there was the incubus of the ARIA Foundation, which stands for the Advancement of Reproductive Innovation through Artistry and Healing. So we started using art, movement, conversation, dance in order to raise awareness around maternal mortality. But fast forward a little bit, when I first met Bruce, and this was, in the film, that was the first time me and Bruce met, was when we went running. And something that he said always stuck with me, and he was like, yo, like, even if I don't know what I'm doing, if I don't know what I'm fighting against, I need to do the research, I need to study, so I could figure out what is actually happening. And for me, like, that really resonated because we can do and do and do, but if we're not doing it properly, if we don't understand the lay of the land, then we can be going in the wrong direction. So that's what I started doing, man. I started reading and studying and, having the opportunity to go out and speak to people and speak to other organizations was, for me, what made me really understand reproductive justice and just getting the knowledge, man. The knowledge is hidden from us. Dr. Green talked about this earlier, just about, the practice of black bodies, and I've been reading this book. It's called Medical Apartheid, and, if you all haven't read it, please read it. It's an amazing book, but it just accounts how from slavery, and specifically like in the 1800s, how our bodies have been used in order for research, again, against our will. And, I say that to say that all these things that were happening, which is really not that long ago, 150 years to 200 years ago, is still happening today. And it fuels me to really keep doing what I'm doing it and doing it in the way that I'm doing it because of the fact that I have the information and I'm able to speak to the people and I'm able to, really get out and really see that this isn't just a Brooklyn thing or a New York thing or an East Coast thing or a Midwest thing, or, like it really is literally happening all around this country, and the world, yes. So, that's really what fuels and drives me, and I think about being cognizant, especially when I'm creating my art that is driven and rooted in emotion, so that even if you don't know, even if you don't understand, you feel, and that once you start to feel, then, it's a brain shift that happens. So just thank you for the question too, but again, reproductive justice for me, like that's really where my brain is going and continues to go over these next however long time.
Before we move, because your question was around brothers being in the conversation, and I wouldn't be me if I didn't mention this. definitely brothers, always, never should have been removed, that whole waiting in the waiting room, and it's a girl, it's a boy, never worked. And I intuitively knew that because I do a lot of ceremony and ritual. I remember 20 years ago, I was asked to design a baby shower for a dear friend. And I was like, your partner needs to be there. And we did the naming, and we acknowledged him, and we covered them. That's just, to me, it made sense. 20 years ago, now you have all they do too much now, right, actually. It's like, oh, the gender reveal and the smoke and the pink, and I'm like, y'all need to calm down. But like, save that money for a house or, but what I wanna say is because of the triplets, and I call them the triplets, white supremacy culture, patriarchy, and capitalism, we have to watch how we enter the conversation. So when brothers come in the conversation, I speak to Bruce and Omari about this all the time, you cannot be over-talking women. You don't have a womb, you don't have ovaries, you don't have a menstrual flow, you don't know what it is like to labor and deliver. One of the things that I experienced with my son's dad is I wasn't able to breastfeed. You know, it was painful, it just wasn't happening. And the disappointment from him, like I was not trying hard enough, and you know, it's ignorance. You know, I don't hold it against him because you haven't been taught, but the shame that I had because of his eyes and his gaze that I wasn't taking care of our son properly. So we have to decolonize our mind. I don't know what's the right word. De-patriarchalize our minds. Because you can do more harm coming into the conversation trying to take over. Your intellectual aspect of it or concept of it is not enough. And also I want to say that brothers go through postpartum depression. That is and brothers align. If you have a partner that aligns with you, they're eating a lot, they're sleepy, like, we're amazing. I hope y'all know that we're, spiritual beings having a human experience. So that deep connection is there, but it's been stripped from us. So we have to relearn and unlearn so we can be together and take care of one another and synergize rather than create competition and dominance in a space where you just want to be able to love on your baby and build your family. So once again, watch the triplets and brothers who enter into the conversation, do the work, do the reading like Omari was talking about, and check yourself because you just don't know what you don't know.
So I do have to apologize. I know I gave you that long speech in the beginning about how you're going to have time to ask questions, and sorry. We actually have to get you to your second half breakout sessions, but will y'all be able to hang out for a little bit? It would be great if you do have some questions or just, again, thoughts about the films. If you're cool with just hanging out for a little bit and talking with folks, but I do want to make sure that we have enough time to get you to your second breakout session. Remember, in this part of the day, we're really asking you to think about next steps, action items, and things of that nature. Then we're going to bring you back in here one more time for Dr. Zapata. Dr. Jasmine Zapata is going to do our final keynote presentation of the day, and then we release you, but after the reception. I just want to say one quick thing.
I'm sorry, and before we leave, can we say one quick thing as well? Right?
Go right ahead, go right.
All right, so really quick, Shawnee and I have been really pushing this ideology of Ubuntu. And Ubuntu means thank you. If you don't know what Ubuntu means, it means I am because we are. So the whole reason, again, we are here together is because of you. Only reason why you are here because of your family, your ancestors, the people who are sitting next to you. We want to make sure that we are intentionally and actively creating a community in which we are all working together in order to redirect this ship. Everybody can do their own thing. Maybe it works. Obviously, it's not really, though. So, we need to really be intentional about coming together. So we're creating an event in New York on April 16th called the Ubuntu Giving Circle. It's going to be at the King's Theater. It's a beautiful spot. The King's Theater is like the Brooklyn, it's like Apollo's Theater, but in Brooklyn. Seats 3,000 people. We need everybody to come out. We need you guys to show up. It's a free event. It's going to be amazing. There's going to be a lot of community organizers there in order to actively bring people together who have the power to do something, to then do it in your own communities. So before we leave out, can we all just say Ubuntu? Can we do that, please? Can you record it for me, please? No, but I need it like right now, though. I need it on my phone. I can't wait 2 weeks to get this recorded. Yeah. Thank you so much. Please record the crowd. Thank you. So, you want to do this?
Producer, director. All right, so we're going to say Ubuntu and say the meaning. I am because we are, and as loud as you can. So on 3, we can all say Ubuntu and then the meaning. So 1, 2, 3. Ubuntu. I am because we are.
Thank you, everybody.
That feels like the perfect note to send you back out to your breakout sessions. One thing I did want to make sure that, one note that I want to make real quick is when we found out that we were getting this winter storm, right, basically a day or so ago, it was funny because we didn't know what to expect, right? And I just think it's a testament to your work, the film, and the Milwaukee community that so many people came out in this weather to be here with you. So again, thank you so much. And like I said, please make your way to your afternoon breakout session. Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Green and Dr. Kowalik as well. Thank you so much for coming this afternoon.